Welcome to the third Gainey School Business Leadership Webinar, and I'm Dr. Caleb Chan, Dean for Gainey School Business, and also your host. And sitting next to me is the speaker, the guest of honor today, and Coach Sam Riggleman. And many of you have seen the flyer that we put together that looks like this. And I'm not going to read the description there verbatim, but I want to highlight a few things about our speaker today. And Coach Riggleman, and some of us players would call him Coach Sam, and a lot of people would call him Sam, and he has a great rapport with people on campus, off campus, and over his career, having coached 39 years of baseball, and he has many players, as you can imagine, who know him well, and they're very respectful of Sam, not just as a coach, but also as a mentor. And some of the things that I wanted to highlight about Sam today is he is currently the head baseball coach at Spring Arbor University. He's also the special assistant to the president at the university, which means that he wears multiple hats, like many people on campus. Until the year 2012, he was the director of athletics, and he has decided to step away, and be focused on the coaching and also leadership development of the students. While he was at Bethel College between 94 and 99, he was also the dean of students. And a couple of career accomplishments. One is he has a career coaching record over 900, and I believe it's in the 950s as of today. He was named National Coach of the Year by NAIA for 2 times, 2000 and 2007. And 5 of his former players, they pitched at Major League level, which is very significant. And then under Sam's leadership in 2007, the Spring Arbor team went on to NAIA World Series and was national runner-up. And in 2008, the team placed 3rd to finish. Well, the list goes on, as you may imagine. But today we are very honored that Coach Riggleman is here with us and to share with us his view on leadership, especially what we can learn from this American game, baseball. And the title of today's session is Leading a Winning Team. What are some of the transferable lessons that we can take from the baseball field to the boardroom? So without further ado, let's welcome our speaker. And I know there are only a couple of people in this room, but let's see, quite a few in the audience. So we'll do that. Well, Sam, one of the first questions that I have in mind, and by the way, we're going to welcome anybody to send in the questions. You can do so through the chat function. Just type in your question, and I'll do my very best to field the questions and find appropriate times to raise the question so they will be addressed. And you can also wait until the end, and we should have about 10 minutes or so for Q&A. The very first question that I have is Zam, obviously that you're very passionate about baseball. Otherwise, you would not have done it for so many years. And you probably have done it long enough, and longer than some of our audience who have lived the life up to this point. How did it all start? Did you know from very early on as a child that you would wanted to play baseball, coach baseball? Yeah. Just tell us a little bit about your upbringings.
Well, I started playing when I was very young, and I was back in that period of time where, unlike what we see today, where there's so much activity going on for young kids, so many options, the summer was filled with baseball, and
Exactly.
it was hanging out with your neighborhood friends, leaving early in the morning, going over to the elementary school playground, playing till lunch, come home and eat, go back until it was supper time, or if you were playing Little League baseball, you ended up headed to the Little League park that night. And so my father happened to be involved with the whole Little League organization, and so I think he served as a president of our Little League Association for a period of time, and so not only myself but my brothers were involved. And that was kind of the start of all of this. I found that was a game that I not only enjoyed but appreciated and got to play, and it was very inexpensive. And I still remember my first experience of going to a professional game in my Little League uniform and watching the Cleveland Indians play. I grew up in Ohio, so I was still am a Cleveland Indians fan, good or bad, and I've ridden that out. But that was kind of the start for all of that, and went to high school, played high school ball. I actually came to Spring Arbor and was not recruited. Now, there was a little bit different tenor of things at that point in time. We've been back in the late 60s and early 70s, and you had an opportunity to try out, and I ended up making the team here, and had the privilege of playing for Hank Burbridge for 4 years.
Sure.
One of the true highlights of my professional career was being able to come back at the close of Hank's career and actually coach with him. So I played for him, coached against him a number of times, and then had an opportunity to be with him when his career was closed out. But that was, the time here, I think, was probably the most formative in terms of going forward in all of this. I majored in physical education here. As a result of Hank's influence in particular, went on to do my master's work at the University of Maryland, which is where he attended. I actually started my coaching career there working for the same guy that he worked for at the early part of his coaching career. And then was fortunate a year after I was out of graduate school to begin collegiate coaching. So this is year 38, and it's been a tremendous trek for me. I've really enjoyed it and certainly love what I do.
Great for that. Well, Sam, I don't think anybody would argue that you have a successful career, and but how do you build your own success? And do you think you're successful? And what definition would you use for yourself?
It's really a definition that I think has evolved, Caleb, over a period of time. I don't think you come into coaching and have it all figured out. And matter of fact, I think it's safe to say that in one's development as a coach, there are many phases that you go through. And certainly at the early part of a coaching career, you're just trying to establish yourself that you know what you're doing. And of course, good or bad, I think what ends up determining that is whether or not you're winning more games than you are losing them. However, I think that the longer I have been involved in working with teams and working with young men, it's become clear to me that the definition of success is a whole lot far more reaching than that. You know, I think that for me personally, there are probably two things that come to mind immediately that I believe are really at the essence of this. And I think what you have to understand is how difficult it is to define this outside of winning and losing, because that's the culture in which we live. My suspicion is it's probably not a culture that's a whole lot different than what's in the business world. And, you know, it's results oriented. And yet, what I think is foundational, one of the foundational pieces to being able to determine whether you're successful or not has to do with effort and the quality of effort that one gives every single day. Are you choosing to work against your highest levels of performance? And for me, that is the challenge that I bring every day to my players, is to be successful means have you given your finest effort to what it is that you're being asked to do. And whether it be on the baseball field or in the classroom or in a business setting, whether or not that the quality of effort is there, I think is really a true indicator. Because at the end of the day, that's where you have peace of mind. You can walk away from things knowing that your effort was extraordinary and you did everything you could possibly do, given whatever task, whatever it was that you were asked to do, and you can walk away from that knowing that you gave your best, you gave your finest. And that has little to do with the winning and the losing part of it, which leads me to the second thing that I think is so important, is that I believe that success is about process. And certainly there is an outcome piece here, and I don't by any means want to downplay that it is there, that it exists. But when that becomes the driving force, it also, I believe, taints and even redirects the trajectory of how it is that you're going to go about this whole effort. And if winning is the only thing, then unfortunately what we find out is that there are other ways to get there, and those ways oftentimes aren't the best ways. And we see, whether in athletics or whether we see it in the business world, people cheat, people do things to undermine other people, and I am adamant that is not the route we want to go in all this. There's a process. There are ways to do this that are a cut above, and there are ways to hold on to your core values. There are things you can control and that you cannot control.
That's right.
And you have to make a choice in this defining success, what it is that you truly have control over and what you don't. And then the things that you do have control over, you make sure that you do the best you can. You do have control over the effort you put in every day. You have control over the attitude you bring to work every day, whether it's you, Caleb, myself, people for whom I coach. They are responsible for that. And to me, that becomes ultimately determine whether or not you're successful.
Well, this is great answer, but not that it's a good answer or bad answer, but it kind of leads into the next questions. When you recruit players, what exactly are you looking for in the players? And we know you want everybody to put in their very best. Winning or losing is secondary, but how do you motivate them to do their very best every single time? And there's a lot of things that are out of your control. And speaking of baseball being so complex, the sport, and strategy can play a big part of that. But maybe we can begin with the notion of recruiting players, or what you're looking in these players, and two is how do you motivate them to do their very best so that they can be successful?
Yeah. Two very important questions. The first one regarding recruiting, there are three pieces to the recruiting puzzle that have to be looked at. Obviously, what gets our attention first and foremost is whether or not a young man is skilled. Does he have talent? Is that talent at the level that it needs to be in order to play here at Spring Arbor University? And is that talent good enough, or ultimately the development of that talent good enough to be able to allow us to play even nationally? So the talent piece is certainly important, and probably without question the thing that initially gets our attention. The second piece of that, though, that I think is extremely important as well, and that is what kind of academic strength does a potential prospective player in our program bring. One of the things I do not care to do is to babysit my guys, to have to go to class, to put in an effort in the classroom. So I'm looking for guys that can, in fact, or have demonstrated academic success. Now, having said that, it doesn't mean that the guys we have in our program are all top-end academic in terms of the performance piece. They're all making A's. I mean, that would be great. What I'm after, again, is just as I am on the field, are you giving us an extraordinary effort in the classroom? You may be a C+ student in a class.
Mm-hmm.
Just give it your best. Make sure every single day you're there, being attentive, sit in the front of the classroom, turn in your work on time, those kind of things. So the second part is finding young men who do, in fact, have academic strength. The third piece, and in my opinion, the most important piece, is whether or not there is a correct character fit.
Mm-hmm.
And to be honest with you, Caleb, of those three things, I could take a young man who maybe doesn't measure up from a skill standpoint, or at least initially, but the hope is he will develop. I may even take a student, prospective player who isn't the strongest academically, has showed promise, has worked at it hard in high school. I think there's some indicators where you can look at that and realize that, you know what, this young man has really worked at it. Maybe it's not a good test taker, whatever the case might be. So I could essentially, I can take a risk there.
Mm-hmm.
Where I don't want to take a risk is on the character piece.
Mm-hmm.
Because I am well aware that if I take a risk there, I probably will continue to deal with that risk throughout the duration of that athlete's time here.
Sure.
And so my risk taking in that area, you know, if I have made a phone call or multiple phone calls and found out that the behavior of this kid away from the field is such and such, or he's not a good worker, he's not a great team player, I'm not even interested any longer, because I think what is so important in terms of chemistry, the fit to the mission of our program, the mission of our athletic program, and the greater mission of the university, that has to be correct. And so those three things are involved in the recruiting process. And I think it's very, very important. And to understand that I've got to stay the course on those things.
Sure.
In what they're doing. So that's the recruiting piece. The motivational part, I have a different take on the motivational part than what many people do and many coaches do, to be honest with you. And when I say this may surprise even you.
Mm-hmm.
We're often talked about as being motivators in the coaching profession. And again, I think that there's undoubtedly, you know, if you're in leadership positions in business, in corporate America, you know, that tag gets put on you. I would go on record as saying this, Caleb, that I don't think I motivate very well at all. Matter of fact, I have moved away from even taking on the responsibility of motivating my players.
Mm-hmm.
Now, having said that, what I have come to realize that every single day I have the responsibility to inspire my players to motivate themselves. And that is what drives me every day when I spend time with our guys. It's not for me to flip a switch and hope that they're going to do something extraordinary, but for me to model in front of them what it means to be excellent and to push the envelope with them, to keep in front of them what this could look like. And what I'm after is for them to make the decision that they will choose to change and motivate themselves. And to me, when I have seen that take place with guys, then there is long-term impact.
Mm-hmm.
There's long-term change with what goes on. But for me to feel like that every single day I've got to walk in and my job is to motivate unmotivated people, that's a pretty tough task. And again, whether it be in a coaching setting, in a team, or that's in corporate America, I mean, you probably know much better than I do in terms of that culture, how difficult it is to motivate people who don't want to be motivated.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for young men who choose to motivate themselves, who are willing to put in the time and the effort, who are committed to excellence, and want to get better at what they're doing. They understand those principles. When they arrive at that point, then you have a chance for some pretty extraordinary things to take place.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Sam. Your comments were very affirming of the notion that Jim Collins shared with us in his book, good to great
Mhm.
companies, and he emphasizes on the putting the right people on the bus,
Yeah.
and then what the opposite, what they put them in the right place on the bus, and I think what is very applicable to the game of baseball.
Mhm.
You find the right players, and appreciative. The notion about the character fit is the most important of all, and you can have the skills, you can have academics, but if say that you don't have the character, it's going to be disastrous.
Mhm.
That person can cause damage to the whole team.
Right.
And the same can be said in corporate America. Well, you have a Fortune 500 company and you want to move the company along
Mhm.
forward, and it's very important to find the right people. Yeah. And
Yes.
some people might have the credentials, but the character fit is going to be
Mhm.
the determining factor,
Mhm.
whether the company that can sustain. In all this, what we have actually with some peers in the university, we have representatives from the student development too. So
Mhm.
the comments and the importance of, in this case, what the baseball being an extracurricular activity, and how it also helps the individual with the academics too.
Mhm.
And I think it is a very important advice. And while not everyone comes to the camp to play sports, but for those who do come, I think what you do in the baseball field is effective in the classroom.
Mhm.
Many players would agree that Coach Sun does not only coach baseball,
Mhm.
he also teach them how to be a leader, and how to be successful in life,
Mhm.
not just about the baseball.
Mhm.
I understand that you're also you're the director of the Montana
Mhm.
Leadership Institute, and even in your role as assistant to the president, you have look at ways to help shape the players
Mhm.
and even students on campus. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. Well, I think it's interesting that you mentioned that, Caleb, because that's really at the essence of what I do. And I have the term baseball coach, but this is so much bigger than that. I have made this comment. Matter of fact, I'm very clear with it in the whole recruiting process when I meet with young men, prospective players, and their families, is that I want to turn out really good baseball players, but I want parents in particular to know I'm more interested in turning out great young men. That's really what I'm after. And in order for that to happen, then you've got to be willing to deal with issues that go way beyond the baseball piece of it. And I think that probably the best way for me to communicate that is to get them to understand that this is a constant pursuit towards excellence. This is what this is about. It's not, the thing that I think is interesting is, and I'm directing this at my own players right now possibly, but I think that it's undoubtedly the case with students across the board, is that the notion that you can be excellent in one area and not in another, I think it's just a horrible fallacy. And either there's a commitment to be excellent in every area of your life, or there's not. And to expect to be an extraordinary performer out on the baseball field and be irresponsible academically, be irresponsible in your personal life, be irresponsible in your decision making, and then you just show up on the field and you are this extraordinary performer, there's no way. And so the issues, in my opinion, are so much more overlapping. And so the pursuit of excellence academically, the pursuit of excellence in your personal life, in your spiritual development, in leadership development. I mean, every one of my guys, Caleb, in some form or fashion are going to be in leadership positions once they finish their careers out and they move into whatever it is their profession might be. They're going to be leading in some form or fashion.
Yeah.
And so their leadership development to me is very important. Do they have some core values in place that they're going to hold on to that are going to make a difference in their influencing? And so I am committed to that. I want to see our young men grow spiritually. I want to see our young men grow personally, emotionally. I want to see them understand that life is not easy. And I think that, oftentimes when you're 18 to 20 years old, the notion is that that's not the case. But, we've got young men on our team right now that during the course of their careers lost very, very close grandparents. And I've seen my guys rally around guys to figure out how to help them handle that. We've got a young man right now whose grandfather's waiting for a kidney transplant. Our guys are praying for him every day. I want our guys to understand that this is what life is about. You're gonna have some tough stuff. You're gonna wake up one morning and find out that a parent has cancer. You may wake up one morning and find out your spouse does. And so how have I equipped you to be able to handle that? And in the adversity of the game, what lessons have I been able to teach my guys that will have tremendous overlap down the road? So you're exactly right. That's what I do. I mean, that's what I feel my calling is to invest and build into the lives of young men. That's what I've attempted to do for nearly 40 years. I think I do it better now than I did. That's what experience will do for you. But that's been my commitment and my call, is to do that very thing.
Yeah, over lunch, but we can talk about how you actually does that, and even one of your former players, but share with you about he very much cherish and value what you does the first few minutes prior to practice, and is the little thing that you continuously share and emphasize, rather than say that we're going to go on a retreat and we're going to do all these things that are, say, important from a leadership standpoint, spiritual standpoint, but then practice is practice, but what the players appreciate most is what you constantly do and share with them, and the little things, the fundamentals, that can make a huge difference.
Yeah. And it's interesting, Caleb, because that's something that I started years ago, and it is interesting when I have an opportunity to talk with former players and start reflecting on what they valued, what was meaningful to them, and almost always it goes back to that, reverts back to coach the first few minutes before practice every day. Matter of fact, I've had guys say to me, I wish I could come back and just join in on that circle again, to be there. But my concept in dealing with that is that I want to give a lot, and rather than trying to give a lot once in a while or a little. And so consequently that daily building into where it's 5 or 6 minutes, it's one concept. I think a guy can walk away thinking, boy, that hit home with me today, rather than a massive amount of information and maybe they get it, maybe they don't. I may run with a theme for an entire week, and I may cut at it different ways, but at the end of the week, my hope is that there's something that would have been substantive enough that a player's going to walk away and say, I'm going to commit to that, and I'm going to make a change. And again, that's what, when I said earlier about inspiring my players to make changes, that's probably the most obvious for me, is to come in and try to provide that every day for them. The other thing too, it helps transition into the work I'm about ready to ask them to do too. So, all of a sudden classes are secondary, and girlfriends and all the other stuff that could be getting into their way. So.
Good. Well, we have some questions from the audience, but I also want to draw attention to maybe your former players, and you have former players, but who are coaches, and who might be competing. The team might be competing with the SAU's team, obviously. And then you have players, but as I try to remember what some of our former students, who are baseball players, they're in different fields, business, and do you ever use some of your former players in as examples for your current players? Okay, say 15 years ago, so was a player, and today he's doing this. Or is it too much to single out one person to bring home what you're trying to explain to the
Well,
players?
I actually think that those kind of examples really help cement and even clarify for our guys what you're capable of.
So it's not just what
That's right.
Principles, but you can see the principles at work.
Here, this has happened, and I love the fact that, and we've had a number of guys that have come through the business department here. The Justin Forsters, who are just exceptional students and exceptional accounting majors, and Brad Bakers, and the list goes on and on and on with guys that I think have just done an exceptional job. But I do think it's important for them to be able to recognize that these are guys that played, and they are now doing the following things. Actually, one of the neatest things I think our team had an opportunity to experience this current year was right at the beginning of the school year. I brought 4 of our former players back that were part of our 2007 World Series team, 2007 and 8 teams, and had them meet with our current players and just share what was unique about those 2 teams, and what was the chemistry like, and what players expected out of one another. And in essence, what my intent was for our current guys to catch the spirit of the culture that was there with those teams, and how they were so unselfish. So those are valuable lessons to be able to do that. So I think that the more of those examples that I can point out to our guys, the better.
Sure. Yeah. Was noted that you had some of your players who are playing in the major league today, and can you tell us a little bit about how they're doing?
Well, most of them now, the guys that were all big league players. And in fact, at one time there were 3 of them competing at the same time at the big league level. Tim Belcher, who probably is the one that has the greatest amount of national recognition, had a 14-year career at the big league level, and is currently with the Cleveland Indians in their front office. Had a 2-year stint as the major league pitching coach with the Indians, and still have contact with him, and I love talking baseball. We've actually spoken together at clinics, and so it's been fun to do that. The other guys, several of them, again, had very extensive careers, and it was just fun to see them develop, because in each of the cases, those guys, they worked at it. They were driven, to excel at a very, very high level, and you have to be fortunate. I mean, there's something to be said of that too. That the right pieces have to fall in place. You have to remain healthy when you're an athlete competing at that level. But it was a fun run to have those kind of guys around and involved in the program. And obviously they were not good. They were exceptional from a talent standpoint. So
well, maybe we can just switch gear a little bit and talk about say the game itself. When you a couple of years that you went on to the World Series, and did you know early on that it was going to happen, and did the strategy come into play at all during that year or the 2 years?
2007 was much, much different than 2008. In 2007, we had absolutely no idea. Matter of fact, when we started the year, we were not rated. We were not on anybody's radar. I mean, we were just another NAIA team, period. And we actually had an early trip down to Kentucky. We won 3 out of 4 games. we had about a week and a half before we were going to be headed down to Florida. And the guys, if any of the guys that were involved in that particular team are listening right now, they'll start laughing at this. But we had an episode that occurred during practice after we'd returned from the trip to Kentucky. And it had to do with the lack of effort on the part of our guys. And we won 3 out of 4, and I think we kind of thought, well, we've arrived here a bit, you know. And anyway, we went through the second night just kind of sleepwalking, and I shut us down. I threw everybody out of practice. So that's it.
Wow.
And matter of fact, I told them that they didn't need to practice. Obviously, they figured that they'd get it all figured out, and dismissed them and said we're done. And we were done for a few days. And the interesting part about all of that was that a young man by the name of Brad Hinkle, who was one of our senior pitchers, walked into my office the following day, and he just sat down and said, "Coach, can I talk with you for a few minutes?" And I said, "Sure, Brad, what's on your mind?" And he said, I clearly understand what you're trying to get done. I want you to know that I'm going to meet with the guys, and we will get things straightened out. And as it turned out, he was the one that basically pulled our players together and said, "Listen, there's a plan in place, and we either have to commit to it or not." And we went back to work, and that was the start of the 36-game winning streak that we then had. And Brad led the way on that. And before the year was over with, we actually ended up the number 2 seed at the NAI National Tournament, and that year played for the national title in Lewiston, Idaho. It's a phenomenal thing, because the ironic part about all of that, Caleb, is that in the midst of this 36-game winning streak, which is such an extraordinary thing in the game of baseball, it's so difficult just to put a 10-game winning streak together, but to do it for 36 games, we never talked about winning. We talked about process. We talked about playing your very, very finest every single day, competing against the game itself, and asking our guys to give their best effort every day. And as a result of that, they experienced something that I think was so extraordinary. And matter of fact, the following year, in 2008, we had an 18-game winning streak and then got beat, and someone came to me and asked me what was wrong with my team. You know, we'd won 18 in a row, are you kidding? But the problem was we'd set the bar so high the year before. But again, I think it comes back to not being consumed with the winning piece, but being consumed with giving extraordinary effort every day, being willing to commit to improving every day, playing at your highest level every day, and then let's see what happens. And that's what took place that year. It's a phenomenal. It was a phenomenal coaching year, because I tried to get out of the way. I tried not to mess it up, in all honesty.
Sure.
I tried to make sure that I didn't overcoach during that time, because I saw what was going on. Now, there were some funny things that happened during the year. I think about Joe Myers, who was a business major, I believe, and one day Joe came into the clubhouse.
He's like a 6'2", isn't he?
Yeah, right, big, tall. He was our closer on our 2008 team, and did a phenomenal. And he's coaching right now, college coaching, which is kind of cool. But anyway, Joe walked into my office. There's a little cubby area of offices there in the clubhouse, and he walked in, and I was in a scramble. I'd been working on the field, and I was kind of running behind, and I needed to get our lineup posted out in the dugout. And I yelled at Joe because I saw him go by the door. "Hey, Joe, I need your help here." I said, "Will you post this for me out there?" And he looked at me and he said, "Coach, do you normally put that up every day and every game?" And I said, "Yeah." He said, "There's no way I'm touching it then. You got to put it up." So there was some superstition going on that I didn't even know about, all that. But anyway, getting back to it, I think it's such an extraordinary thing, because the level of commitment to our process, particularly in 2007, was really, really good. And in 2008, we may not have had, we still won 40 games that year and finished third in the World Series. and played very, very well come tournament time, which is where you want to, that's what you want to do. You want to, at the end of the season, you want to be at your best. And our guys were really, really locked in again. And it was so fun to see that because they understood there was a process involved and we're going to stay with the process. So.
Yeah. Well, with the theme of this webinar being about let's see if there are any transferable lessons that we can take to the courtroom, to the business ball, and I think we have identified several. You have affirmed that what putting the people, the right people on the bus is important, and these right people that would entail they're being self-motivated, so they don't have to constantly be watching them, spoon-feeding them,
Right.
babysitting them, and now you add one more is what don't focus too much on winning. And in the corporate world, I think that winning oftentimes would mean, well, let's make the most money.
Mm-hmm.
But what about serving your customers? What putting your very best, put the best product possible out in the marketplace, and let profit take care of itself. And I think in corporate America, oftentimes we are looking at short-term results. Well, we need to have results. We need to hit the bottom line. But what the long-term wise, these fundamental principles, as we earlier talked about over lunch, they're not necessarily baseball principles.
That's right. Yeah.
They are good principles that can be applied in the baseball field, in life, in family, in the workplace. Yeah. Well, we have about 15 minutes or so left, and I got a few questions that I wanted to see how best we can answer these from audience.
You can, right?
Yeah. Well, one is some of this you may have touch on, so that feel free to build on it, or maybe give us a different perspective. The first one is coach. What do you think is better for stars? To be the face of the team, or does this lead to that inflated ego, and how can this be minimized?
One of the things, and again, I'm giving you my perspective on this, obviously. We have tried to function as a team with the idea in mind that when everyone is important, when everyone is valued, and valued at the same level, that it does not matter who gets the credit. We walk off the field either having won together or lost together. And I think that is a very, very important principle. I want our guys to value one another and value the contribution that every guy brings. We have 25 guys involved here. Not everybody's at the same level of talent. And the face of the team is the team for me. And one of the things that has been said of clubs that I've coached in the past is that other coaches, opposing coaches, would say at the end of the year or maybe after a series with them that, Coach, there's nobody that you have that just stands out off the charts, but your guys play so well together. Well, isn't that the essence of what team is about? And do I want talented players? Absolutely. But within the context of who we are. And when a team is driven by an ego, there are just so many multiple problems with that. And one of the things that we ask our guys is to check your ego at the door. The ego that we're after is a team ego that overrides what a guy is individually. Because when an individual ego gets involved, then what happens? A personal agenda gets involved.
Sure.
And when a personal agenda gets involved, then their decision making and their selfishness all of a sudden begins to take over. And that becomes divisive within a team. I mean, there are multiple problems that
And
consider.
it makes the team so vulnerable.
That's right.
Yeah. And the same can be said for the corporate America. And well, we might have very effective, high performing individuals in our companies, but the company should be the face,
Yeah.
not the individuals.
Yeah.
Sometimes we put too much emphasis on CEOs.
Mhm.
Great.
Let me give a very, very specific example, Caleb, that hits right at that question. In 2008, actually this happened in August of 2007, we had just gone to the World Series and had the extraordinary run. And in the middle of August of 2007, so this would have been 2 or 3 weeks before the start of school, I received a phone call from a young man who actually had been at Creighton University the year before and had a hand injury and was medically redshirted. And because of NCAA rules, he had started out at junior college, a young man from over in the Ann Arbor area, Chelsea area.
Mm-hmm.
By NCAA rules, was unlikely to be eligible in the spring. And he had some guys that were friends that were currently on the team and contacted us about transferring in here. Now that's really late to bring in guys, and he was a third baseman, and you may recall at that time we had Jeff Hollister, who was the National Gold Glove Award winner at third base, that was in our program at that point. And so I brought he and his father in and sat down with them and just said, listen, you need to understand something. Number one is we've got a good situation here, and secondly, you're not going to play third base here. I've got the best guy in the country. So you have to be willing to come in and fit with what we're doing. Well, the young man was Jimmy Baker. That following spring, he led the NAIA, the entire country in hitting. He had over 500. He may be the finest offensive player that I have coached in almost 4 decades of college coaching. And I will just tell you this, that Jimmy Baker had the right, because of his skill set, to be an ego, and was never that person. He submitted himself to a greater good, and he got to experience something that I think was the capstone of his athletic experience because of that. And to me, that is such a prime example of a guy that he wasn't good, Caleb. I'm telling you, he was at a very, very elite level. Went on to play independent pro ball for several years, and finally he's out of it now. But what he brought to us in terms of his ability, every guy in our club benefited from. And Jim Baker never held that over a guy, and which to me was such an extraordinary thing. So again, I think that's a prime example of submitting your ego to what? A greater ego, which is the team. So.
Sure, yeah. Well, talking about the players and that not every game that you can win, the question is can you please go through the process you might use to help the players deal with the inevitable failures that come with the game of baseball?
Yeah. Sounds like a baseball person. Maybe one of my players.
Could be, yeah.
Well, probably the single most important item regarding that question centers on this, and that is, do you understand the things that you're capable of controlling versus the things you cannot control? And in baseball, because the failure rate of performance is so high, particularly on the offensive side of things. I mean, I mentioned to you over lunch, guys are being paid not thousands of dollars, but millions and millions of dollars, and they're failing 75% of the time. And how you handle failure 75% of the time determines whether or not you're any good the other 25%, which is the ironic part about it. But I think it centers on the single most important thing is, do I understand what I can control? I don't get to pick who's going to pitch against me. In baseball, you can go to the plate and you can square a ball. You can hit a ball right on the screws, just right on it, and hit a line drive right at somebody and it's an out. And now you have to evaluate, was that a good at bat or a bad at bat? The problem is our game is so statistically driven that everything is about getting hits, or everything is about strikeouts. And so you have to teach players that isn't how you're going to be able to be successful. You have to stay with the process. You have to be willing to overlook statistics. I got to be honest with you, Caleb, I very seldom spend any time looking at the statistics of our club during the course of the spring. I know they're there. Our players can get to them. Parents get to them. You know, they have more knowledge of them than I do because I just don't spend a lot of time evaluating them. Bottom line is, are we winning or are we not? And if we're not, is there an area that we're not performing well at that I need to address as a coach that's got to be met during practice?
It's more important to look forward than
That's
looking
right.
behind.
That's right. So, again, I think you have to understand what is it that I can control. I can control my attitude. I can control my effort every day. I can control the process. I mean, all those things are things that I have control over. I do not have control on the speed of the center fielder or the opposition that I'm playing against. I may scorch a ball into the right center field gap, and that center fielder runs over, dives, he's prone on the ground and catches a ball in the webbing of his glove. You know, was that a bad at bat? I didn't get a hit. And so therein lies the key, is understanding what am I capable of managing. It's interesting that question's being asked because today that is the very thing that I'm dealing with our players. The very thing. It's a process versus an outcome. Do I understand the importance of staying with the process? I can't control the outcome. So.
Very good advice. Very good advice. I have one more from the audience, and then I might have one to the close about time today. It is on leader or leadership. I guess as a leader, what advice do you have in regards to the addressing inadequate effort or underachievement of a team member, co-worker, if we take it to the workplace?
Well, one of the things that I have really spent a lot of time with my own coaching staff, meaning the coaches who coach with me, is how is it that we go about what we do every single day? Because that's a reality. You're going to have people who underachieve. I don't believe you deal with any of that in a corporate way. That takes a lot of individual work with people, finding out what is going on, why they aren't motivated. Is there something going on away from, in our case, the field or the workplace that is impacting what is taking place right now? You know, I have embarrassed myself on occasion, Caleb, where I made an assumption about one of my players only to find out that there was something going on at home that was devastating. And he was carrying that into practice every single day. And because I didn't bother to find out what it was, I made this assumption regarding his performance. It's extremely important to realize that my players, the subordinates in the workplace, want affirmation. They want to feel valued. They want to know that their dignity is important. And, you know, it's interesting because the research, and you know this better than I probably, Caleb, the research in industry is indicating that as leaders and as superiors, as managers, to be liked is important, because what we're finding out is that if people enjoy working for you, their level of performance is significantly better. So the question is, then why would they like me? And I think the bottom line in that question is because I affirm them, because I make them feel important, because I see value in them. If I want to change the level of work that somebody is giving me, then I have to be willing to get at that level and find out what is going on so that I can come alongside of a player or somebody who's a worker and affirm them and help them understand that they're important, they're valued. Help them through whatever they might be dealing with. It could be away from could be something I said that I wish I hadn't said, maybe. whatever those things might be. So I think that becomes a focus of what we're doing. One of the things that I ask out of my coaching staff is to daily breathe greatness into our players.
Mm.
You know, how do you do that? You affirm them, you come alongside them, you encourage them, you push.
Care about them.
Yeah, that's right. You know, you get a thumb in their back, maybe a foot in their back,
For some.
or the back side anyway. So
Sure.
you know, but you do that, and again, as I think if you were to ask my players point blank, you know, what coach is like, they're going to tell you that he's firm. But I'm firm with the understanding that, you know, if I've had to really push somebody, I'm going to make sure that it is on my radar to come alongside of them and encourage them that, hey, we're heading in the right direction, or whatever the case might be. I think those things have to be balanced out. So.
Yeah. Well, Sam, I've saved my million-dollar question for this last 2 minutes.
Okay.
Obviously, you have a very unique leadership style. In your 4 decades of coaching college baseball, are you going to maintain the same leadership style had you been appointed the CEO of Fortune 500 companies today? Why not?
Yeah. Well, let me back up in response to that. 15 years ago, I'm not sure I would have been at a point where I could have said yes to that question 20 years ago. I think I can say yes to that now. And the reason I think I'm able to say that is because of a lot of mistakes I've made.
We all do.
That's right. You know, the experience you now have, and the fact that I've invested so much more time and effort into understanding this whole leadership concept and the importance of my role in all of that. So I do believe that. You know, you mentioned Jim Collins' book, and by the way, I'm a big fan of Jim Collins, and I've read that through not once but multiple times. And one of the things that I love about what happened with his research was, as you well recall, he gave the instruction when his research team was ready to go out and they were to do all their work and compile and bring back. One of the instructions he gave them, final instructions, don't come back and tell me that the top leadership is the difference in why these companies are able to perform at such a high level over a 15-year period. And when they all reconvened to debrief on all of this, they said to Jim, do you just need to know something? What you asked us to do, cannot do. Because the reality of it is that is the difference. And what was said was that there was, and it's termed different ways, professional will, but it was blended with humility.
Exactly.
A ferocious resolve, and it was blended with humility. I'd like to think that in my leadership style, those two things exist. And at least it's what I'm working for and have been for some period of time. And so to answer your question, could that? I believe it could. And again, I don't think I was at a point 15 years ago where I may have been able to say that. But I think as I have evolved and the more I understand about leadership effectiveness, that, we want to get some things done, but not at the expense of people. And I'm hoping that I have a better understanding of that now.
Sure. Well, Sam, we wish we had more time to continue the dialogue, but we ran out of time, and we promise our audience that we'll end on time, and so that they will keep coming back. Maybe a quick preview of what we're going to do after the seminar. We're going to be skipping the month of December because of holidays, and then we'll likely come back either in January or February when the semester resumes. So we'll send out the information like we have done before, and we hope that it's been beneficial to you, the audience, and I'd like to invite you to join me and thank Coach Sam Riggleman for his time and the invaluable advice.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Sam.